Hi guys, welcome to my second video covering some of my experiences from the Malifaux World Team Cup in Manchester, UK at the end of May 23. In the previous video, I talked about all of the sort of tournament organisation sort of stuff and some of my personal experiences from the event. In this video, we're going to be covering the 5 games that I played. There were 6 rounds, but we did have a bye for one of the rounds. So I'm going to be talking about those games, and so hopefully it will be of interest to some of you, and will give a little bit more detail on the games themselves. So, my last video was far too long, so this one I'm going to try and speed up a bit, and I'm going to jump right in. Game 1, I played against Zli from MWS. On Bagger Tools, his name was Krzysztof B, and he was playing for Poland 3. So it was Czech Republic versus Poland 3, and we ended up with a Thunder's Mirror on a map that had some pretty weird terrain. It was like a Dreamer theme table, and in the middle there were 3 sort of CDs covered in fluff and with soft toys kind of glued onto them, that were supposed to be kind of blocking, but the fluff was concealing, and I don't know what the CD was supposed to be, but we ended up playing them as concealing. And so yeah, lots of concealing terrain in the middle with some blocking. And yeah, the middle really mattered. We were both, as I said, playing Thunders. I declared Linh, and that's going to be a theme. I declared Linh in all 5 games. And my opponent declared Shen Koji. So Shenlong with the Koji stuff, and in this tournament it wasn't restricted or balanced in any way. It was just in the pure sort of broken form. So I played a pretty typical Linh 1 list, although I actually was testing out Mia for a lot of this weekend. And so I had, yeah, Linh 1, but with Mia in instead of what would normally be another bookkeeper or Kunoichi, something like that. So Map, Than Gyong, Raijin, in this case Mia, and bookkeeper I think I had in that game, maybe not. No, because it was cursed objects. So we were playing cursed objects in round 1, and so we both had Fuhatsu, who makes a great deal of sense in cursed objects, because even if you miss, then a model of yours within 3 of that model can take a general action, and that action can be taken as if you're not engaged. So that can allow you to do some scheming stuff, or it can often allow you to pass the cursed object token over on a model that's either already activated or might die or whatever. Or you can just shoot them in the face with a massive minigun and do a lot of damage. Either way, Fuhatsu is great for cursed objects. But that didn't matter a great deal, because what essentially happened was that I took Secret Meetup and Leave Your Mark, and that's the reason that I took Linh 1, was that I wanted to be able to threaten to remove the markers that he was using for his Koji strategy with Lost Knowledge, but also to be able to place my schemes down more easily for Leave Your Mark and Secret Meetup. The meetup was really badly planned by me. I put it on Map and Sensei Yu. I have played a reasonable amount of Thunders, but the monks are the one keyword, one of the keywords that I just have no interest in. I hate the aesthetic. I really, I have no interest in playing them really pre-Koji brokenness, and that stuff is so busted that outside of a major tournament, even I, who loves playing the strongest stuff, probably would not play that. unless someone specifically asked me to. So he had a relatively typical Shen Koji list, so Koji with a Lotus Eater for the protection money stuff, and then the Four Winds Golem. He had Fuhatsu in this case because of cursed objects, and a Low River Monk, and Sensei Yu. Anything else I'm particularly missing? I think that was about it. None of it really matters. So, what was interesting was that I know Lin very, very well. I've played a hell of a lot of games of Lin since she was released, and my opponent was also a Thunders player, and he knew Lin relatively well as well. But he also had obviously played a fair amount of Shen. And so he knew both sides of the matchup, and I only really knew my side. I knew what his side did in theory, but you could just tell once we got into the game that his experience really showed, and he outplayed the hell out of me. So, as per all of the schedule and pairing problems that were mentioned in the first video, we didn't have a great deal of time, and I had chosen, two schemes which I felt were very possible to score on turns 2 and 3, and that became very relevant. So we got into it, and he started off with the Shenkoji engine, so pumping up chi onto all of his guys, and then dropping down 2 of my scheme markers near his protection money models, and then using both of his totems to pick them up and drop them again, triggering a massive amount of card draw. I think he was drawing, I think he had a very, very sort of, and I do believe it's correct, he had a very mild version of the list. I think the theoretical maximum that someone worked out in a crazy world would be 144 cards a turn, but he was going for a much more reasonable 12 cards per turn, including the original 6, so sort of 18 of your 54 cards will be in hand during a turn, meaning that you are close to guaranteed to have severes at any given time, and in combination with chi, you are going to be on stat 6, 7, 8, aggressively or defensively as you wish, which means you can sort of guarantee attacks going through, and you can guarantee attacks failing for your opponent. So my game plan was largely based around not trying to kill anything, because it was very unlikely to happen, but more based on trying not to die and then out-scheming my opponent in the few turns that I felt we would have. I was able to sort of set that up, so I managed to mitigate the damage I took early on, up until the Four Winds Golem got involved. So he sort of moved up cautiously, and then with the Four Winds Golem was able to sort of give it fast, give it focused, give it chi, give it everything it wanted. And I had missed the fact that he had the ability to gain plus flips from chi in addition to the usual, like, I don't know whether it's in addition or instead of, I haven't used the Four Winds Golem that much, but he could, use chi for a plus flip, and that was important because with the focus and the chi, he was able to get the double positive that you needed to be able to hit my Jade Rabbit with the Silent Protector upgrade that was otherwise going to cause him some nightmares. Another broken combination. I wouldn't recommend using that one in friendly games either. I do, but I'm an arsehole. So the Four Winds Golem was one of the rare models. There are some, Nino, and there are plenty of models that can deal with the rabbit, but now I can add another one to the list. If you can't deal with the rabbit, then he can just challenge someone, you get a double negative, and then he runs off, and you kind of have to discard cards to do stuff, which can be problematic. Against Shen Koji, it probably wasn't the best pick anyway, because, oh no, I have to discard 3 cards, I'll just draw 12 more. From my point of view, probably a bad allocation of soul stones there, but just on the basis that I hadn't met that counter personally yet, and I tend to learn lessons much better on the table rather than in theory, sadly, so I usually have to lose to something before I learn from it. So here it was. I wouldn't recommend Silent Protector Rabbit up against a Shen Koji list. I would recommend it in most other places competitively. So he brought in the Four Winds Golem, and the one of the reasons why that model is so incredibly effective against Lin is that he has leap and flight, and the combination of those with his size 3 and his large base means that he can effectively block line of sight from Thangyong to whichever model you wish to kill. So the reason that most models in a Lin list are close to impossible to kill in the early game is because you will hit them once, they'll mitigate the damage slightly to some degree, and then you'll attempt to hit them again, and Than will take the hit, spreading the damage across the crew, and then the crew is incredibly effective at just healing itself up. So they spread the damage and heal up via take the hit from Than, but that is an aura, and so when the Four Winds Golem comes and flies or leaps in between the model that it wishes to kill and Than, then you can't take the hit, and if you can also block line of sight to things like map, then damage can't be transferred, and so on and so forth. So he very efficiently killed the rabbit very early, and then did essentially the same thing again to the Low River Monk the following turn to score his cursed objects. And a lot of my game plan usually revolves around, yes, I won't kill that much stuff, especially not versus Shen Koji, but I will prevent you from killing me, and then I will outscore you on schemes. That's a lot of my game plan, is not to die. And unfortunately, Zli's very great positional play and good thinking ahead and good sort of matchup knowledge, both sides of the matchup, thinking about what his strengths were and what my weaknesses, or what my strengths were and how to mitigate them. Brilliant. Completely outplayed me, and something that I learned from. So immediately after that, I started to put models base to base with Than to prevent that from happening, and I tried to react, but it was already, a bit too late. I'd lost 2 of my support models before we even really got started, and then because there were no chest locks and the schedule and pairings were bad, pairing system, we didn't get past turn 3, sorry, Jesus. So there's the spoiler. We didn't get past turn 3, and so we arrived at turn 3, where I had actually managed to kill his Four Winds Golem eventually. I took it down with sort of sustained attacks from various models, one big shot from Fuhatsu, one tap from map, just one thing, because his butterfly jump and the terrain in the middle was quite irritating with the amount of dents, so he could usually only get hit once, and then he could find a spot to be out of line of sight. So, but I managed to use the aforementioned Fuhatsu miss, cause and interact, which allowed my Than to hand over a token, and he was left on 1 health, and then Than just ran up and did a bonus action for an unresisted 1 damage. So that sort of gets around the fact that usually he could just go Chi plus massive severe and force me to miss, but Than doesn't require any resist. So that was nice. I managed to score my 1 cursed, and I managed to, at the end of the second turn, I really waited until Sensei Yu sort of went roughly along the line that I was expecting him to take, and he did, and then I managed to double run my map, who had been like up in the air by the Winds Golem back behind my own shit, so I'd had to sort of like use a lot of Lin's out of activation movement tricks to try and unclusterfuck my deployment and bring map back into the fold, and he just ran all the way up and managed to score my secret meetup, so that was nice. Also, Leave Your Mark was sort of set up, but was denied by Shen's bonus, I think it was. Shenlong, one of Shenlong's either like an action or a bonus, was allowing him to move my markers away, and he was sort of just waiting for a late activation and then doing that, which was reasonable. I didn't make very good use of my double shift to take activation control, but largely because I'd usually lost it already because of the Four Winds Golem killing an unactivated model. I had the opportunity to take initiative away from him on one of the turns, and I didn't, and I regret that as well. I think I should have done. But you know, these are other mistakes that were made. The reason being that if I'd managed to do that and then moved, you know, knowing what I know now, I could have moved one of my weaker models base to base with Than, and that would have allowed, you know, a much better approach to the defensive style that I was trying to play. In the end, the game came down to time, so we were told, you know, no more turns to be played. Okay, we know this is going to be the last turn. I'd kind of predicted that anyway, and was setting up for the end game points, so trying to get the 2 scheme markers on my secret meetup building and also get my leave your mark markers down. And then things were moving slowly. I'm a slow player. I would say I was responsible more so than my opponent for sure for them moving slowly. And one of my teammates was trying to speak to me just towards the end of the game, you know, when we had really seconds or minutes remaining. And I understand why, but I also understand why that wasn't ideal from the game perspective. And so when last activation was called, it was my activation. But I think the very last activation of the turn, or certainly one of them, we were almost to the end of the turn completely, and Zli basically just wanted to take his last activation with Shenlong himself, and we had already lost the team round. I knew it, so it just seemed really pointless to start arguing over a technicality of, well, his last activation, the current activation, or the next activation. As it happens, I went and I asked the judge just for the following round, so I'd know what to do in future, and it was the current activation, so the one that was actually happening when the announcement was made. So technically, Shenlong shouldn't have activated, and technically, if he hadn't activated, he wouldn't have denied both of my points. So he just moved both my scheme markers out of the way, denied secret, denied leave, and I ended up on 2 points instead of 4. My opponent had scored 3, so we ended up with losing 2-3. But as I say, my opponent really did outplay me in the game, and it was only my preparation for a clockless low time round that gave me a chance. And as I say, we'd already lost the team round, so there was no point in trying to, you know, cause any issues with that. Zli was an absolute gentleman to play against. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. As I say, I felt that he played better than me for sure, and deserved the win. So that was game 1. Game 2, much easier and faster to describe. That was a bye. So because we got smashed so hard by Poland 3, we were the lowest ranked team at that moment, and we ended up getting a free win in game 2. So that gave us a lot of time to chill out. We were all a bit irritated at that stage about how the timing system and all the stuff that I mentioned in the previous video were going, and so having a couple of hours to just kind of go whoo and chill out and calm down was very, very useful, and allowed us to sort of get our heads back in the game and come back in strong. So we then played against Wales. I played against a Mr. Anthony H. I'm afraid I don't know people's surnames. I do apologize. And from this point on, I decided I was playing Lin 2. So I declared Lin 2 in all 4 of the following games, because she has a much more simplistic and quick to execute game plan, which often allows you to score schemes in turns 2 and 3 much better. Lin 1 usually has a bit of a longer term game plan in using double shift for activation control and so on and so forth. But I felt with how crap the format was that it was going to be better to just play Lin 2 and try and score turn 2 and 3 and go from there. My opponent declared Tony 2. But it was a really weird list in that it was Tony 2 without the one model that makes Tony 2 good, so it didn't run Fitzsimmons, and that just felt wrong, and it still feels wrong now. I just can't justify that. And so this sort of rather self-nerfed version of Tony 2 faced up against a very standard Lin 2 list. My Lin 2 list was the same in most of the rounds because we had very little time to actually build a crew or do anything really, so I just had to sort of play a stock Lin 2 list and then do my best. I wish I'd had a bit more time, but I mean, that's an ongoing theme from the whole thing. I don't remember exactly how this one played out, and I apologise, so this will be a very, very quick report, which is to say that without Fitzsimmons, he was relying on Howard to do a hell of a lot of work. The Silent Protector Rabbit was able to sort of block Howard off in choke points and sort of slow him down and force him to move around. And I used Raijin and I used Maddening Drums on his little dredges or whatever they're called, the little guys, the summon guys, who had already activated effectively. And I used them to push activated models in front of his Howard and just keep blocking off choke points, just blocking him off. And I don't think Howard ever managed to make a melee attack in the entire game. Because he tried to go one way, got blocked off by the rabbit. He tried to go the other way, got blocked off by his own models. And then he tried to go all the way back around, and then he got sort of trapped in between a strategy marker and a wall. And then he couldn't get around the other side because of the rabbit again. So the rabbit was just following around, making him miserable. And since he didn't have Fitzsimmons, I could sort of focus all of my efforts on his one model that was doing some work. He did have the gunsmiths. He had 2 gunsmiths, but Lin 2 herself was tasked with sort of charging in and making their life miserable, and then Raijin sort of fished the other one out, and I killed that one off. And it was just a slow, grindy game in which I was keeping him away from the strategy and just slowly executing my game plan. Nothing too special there from my side. Just normal grindy play. And I think again we ended in turn. That might have been the game where did we make it to turn 4? It might have been turn 3, turn 4, not sure. And we ended up 5-1 in favour of Lin. We come into game day 2, and round 4 was up against Daniel S from Germany 2. These guys had been doing some serious drinking the night before and were looking a little bit worse for wear, but they certainly played hard and brought their minds to the table. So we ended up playing Lin 2 against Von Stuck 2. And once again, this was a 3-turn game where I was able, with Paper Tiger using Leap and Roar to push minions away and give them slow, I was able to slow the game right down, push his Students of Viscera back. Silent Protector on the Rabbit challenged Valedictorian, which put a lot of sort of card pressure on him there. Lin 2's suit cancelling aura is rather nice against Von Stuck 2 because anytime they cheat trying to like match your suit, they lose their suits, so they can't do that. So some of their card draw is limited. And Paper Tiger's Roar, just pushing the Viscera away and giving them slow, really denied strategy. This was guard the stash, I'm pretty sure. So I was trying to play guard the stash and covert for the whole day after this, because after the round 1 cursed game, I wasn't feeling great about that. And guard and covert are really good for denying. So you can deny points, and if you're only playing a 2, 3, 4 turn game, then every deny is potentially game winning. So Just didn't let him anywhere near the strat markers, slowed the game right down, boring conversation, silent protector, positioning shenanigans, a lot of healing, so a lot of sort of condition removal and healing, and just tanking hits on Than and then healing back up, and then at the end of the turn going with Paper Tiger and scoring and denying wherever it was necessary, and that basically worked. We got to the towards the end of turn 3, but there was only 10 minutes left on the round clock, so the no more turns to be played announcement was made, at which point I knew I'd won, because he just couldn't score early enough, and I'd planned for it and he hadn't. So, or if he had, then he wasn't able to execute that game plan. Obviously I can't see into his mind or whatever, but we ended up 3-1 in favour of Linh. In all of these cases, I direct you back to the first video, which is that I don't want tournaments to be played this way. I really do not. But when this is the format, then I will play according to the format and will do my best to win, and successfully did so. I don't know what more to say. We get to round 5. We play against the other Germany team. I think there were actually 3 Germany teams, but there was like Germany 1, Germany 2, and then Bavaria, I think. So anyway, we didn't play against Bavaria. We played against Germany 1. And here I played against the absolute gentleman, Mark L. And I say that because this is the round where we were very, very late following a chaotic attempt to have some lunch, which, yeah, almost ended viscerally, and so we run back into the room and we find him waiting for us, and he declares Misaki 1, so it's another Thunder's Mirror, this time Linh 2 against Misaki 1. And in this one, I think he was just a little bit surprised by Linh. I don't think he'd seen Linh before, and he was surprised by the speed of the unpack. And given the deployments chosen, there were only a few corridors for him to sort of make it to the guard markers, and it was a diagonal guard, so 4 on the midline, and I essentially just blocked off each of the choke points. So Rabbit in one, Map in another, Linh in another, and I managed to get Raijin into melee combat with his Fuhatsu before he reached the marker. So, you know, when you've got a model with laugh off, you really don't want to let it get to the strategy marker, because then you can't move it. And with Fuhatsu, I spent a lot of the game sort of sinking damage into him just because there was no better target at the time, and then watching it be healed up with Juggernaut and Low River Monk and things like that. Again, in that one, I had secret meetup, but I ended up having to kill the secret meetup target because it was the crime boss, and he didn't go the way that I really thought he would. He actually sort of went all the way around the back and then through a different corridor. I can't remember whether he had a reason for that, like he had his own secret meetup or something like that. Not sure. But given the choice, I decided to just kill that model quickly because he was stacking him up with focus, and I know that they are defensively pretty poor and offensively pretty good. So I decided to just end it with Linh 2 rather than risk having the matchup go south just for the sake of 1 point. I was also able to remove one of his shadow markers so that Misaki was having trouble unburying by using Maddening Drums on my own Mia and just punting her over to the side and destroying 1 shadow marker. And then I sat Map's fat ass on the second shadow marker so that he couldn't go base to base with it. So he had to undeploy back in his own deployment zone. And then I threw the Rabbit into to block another choke point that she was going to try and come through. So Misaki wasted 1 turn just sort of trying to melee her way through the Rabbit. She eventually did that, but you know, it was definitely a good trade for me. Meanwhile, Tiger was doing his thing, pushing the Woko Raider away from my deployment because he had In Your Face, and I was basically trying to spend the whole game trying to get Misaki to map to kill him. Eventually did so, but that sort of confirmed for me that the second point of In Your Face was in contention. So I used the Paper Tiger to constantly sort of leap in, pushed the Woko, I'm so used to saying Yoko, Woko Raider, I think it's called, 6 inches away and give it slow, and just sort of make sure that it wasn't going to make it to my deployment. I think this was the game that we actually made it to turn 4, because it was going reasonably heavily in my favour, just because of the fast unpack and the control of the choke points. So controlling all the choke points, and having Lin to just kill, a model a turn, and having Raijin locked down for Hatsu so that he wasn't such a threat, was really in my favour. And we ended up 6-2 in favour of Lin 2. So then we move on to round 6, the last game of the day, and it was David Cameron, Team Northwest, from the UK, and he declared Seamus 1 against Thunders. And I thought that was brave, because Thunders have some of the better answers to Seamus, with Raijin providing -2 to pistol damage within 3 inches, and with the Terracottas turning any damage, whether it's 8 or 4 or whatever he wants to do, into 1 damage, with Take the Hit. Terracottas are really, really good. But it turns out he hadn't seen Terracottas since they were changed and wasn't aware of that change. So it wasn't sort of a full information pick. It was just it was his comfort pick, and he was good with Seamus. So he decided to go that route. And I was overly cocky. I took a double Terracotta list, again with Lin 2 and with Raijin and so on, but I didn't play particularly well in that game. I was half trying to play I bubble in the middle of guard and you can't possibly score style, because I've got 2 Terracottas, Raijin and Than. I can take the hit everywhere and you'll just never kill anything with Seamus, and once Seamus can't kill anything, your list kind of falls apart. But he was playing a double Doxy with upgrades and Bet Noir and Manos, and he was trying to play a sort of go around the sides and score breakthrough and sabotage kind of style, rather than a shoot you dead kind of style. So I started to spread out in response to that, but I did it too aggressively. I didn't sort of leapfrog effectively. I didn't cover myself as I should have while unpacking, and so he was able to just snap Raijin off the board and snap a Terracotta off the board. So he snapped a Terracotta turn 1, shot him once, Crow's trigger, pulled him in, took another attack because he'd moved in out of activation, smacked him again, and then just meleeed him once more, and did 3 damage, killed off the Terracotta. And then that was the Terracotta that was kind of covering Raijin. So next turn comes in, ignores hard to wound, does 8 damage down to 6 because of Raijin's aura. Again, pulls him into melee with a Crow trigger, smacks him for the additional 2, wipes Raijin off the table. I was hoping for the high masks to be able to sort of summon that Raijin back with my other Terracotta, but I'd never got the chance. And the following turn, he deleted Mia with Seamus again. So it was very, very, very hard to prevent that once you sort of start that downward trend of losing your models that you were hoping to prevent the pain with. Then all of a sudden, the pain train really gets rolling. Additionally, I tried really, really, really hard to prevent him scoring guard, and was sort of controlling all of the markers, really everything, pushing stuff off, controlling more models here, out of activation movement, really making sure that I was using everything I could. And then I just forgot like an idiot that all he had to do was switch Seamus with his totem, and just score with Seamus on some back corner guard token that I wasn't looking at. And it was stupid because it was really, really predictable. But at the end of a long weekend, I'll forgive myself that. But yeah, it wasn't great. And in the end, it all came down to a very low percentage play that I tried to make, which was that I saw his Manos was trying to get through my list. It was really trying to go around the back and then sort of leap around the side. And I really wanted to prevent that because I figured, the only reason that's happening is to score some VP. And, VP are everything, especially in a game that yet again finished around turn 3. So I was attempting to score my own in your face, trying to get one of my models to his deployment. I was also trying to prevent his Manos, and I thought that maybe he had in your face as well and was trying to get Manos to my deployment. So I trapped Manos in, and that sounds stupid until you realize that if he fails the leap, then if he cheats, he loses the suit and then he can't leap. So my hope was that he would fail the leap. You know, it's about 12 cards. It's 1, 2, 3, or 4 will fail, I'm pretty sure, off the top of my head. And he did flip that 4, thank God. And therefore, Lin 2's aura, plus the fact that I'd physically trapped the model in, so he had to leap to get out of there, meant that he couldn't leap and he couldn't get to my deploy. Now, he actually didn't have in your face. He was just trying to get there to get a second control of the back corner guard markers, but the result would have been the same. He would have scored 1 more VP, and instead of a 3-2 win, it would have been a 3-3 draw. So I think, given that I made so many mistakes going into that game, and given that it was probably quite a bad matchup for Seamus as they go, the table was great for him, as most of them were at the event, but given that it was a bad matchup, you know, Thunders traditionally should be pretty good against Seamus. He pulled out. He was seconds away from a 3-3. He could have fixed it by doing, given that he didn't need to make any attacks or do anything once he leapt, he just needed the leap to go off. Then all he needed to do was concentrate and then, you know, spend the focus on the leap flip. And then he would have almost certainly avoided while pinging himself for the suit. But I'm certain that he'd just forgotten about Lin 2's aura. If you're not aware of Lin 2, then it can be easy to forget the aura. Of course, I reminded him various times during the game, but you know, you're under a lot of pressure. You're never going to remember every rule at every time, and you'd already flipped the card by the time it had already failed, and so you know. That was the end of that. So we ended up with a 3-2 win there for Lin 2. So Lin 2 really did perform for me. Lin 1 was also, to be honest, performing pretty well, doing what she was supposed to be doing in game 1, but the Shenlong Koji thing is truly, truly busted. And my opponent played it really, really well, as I mentioned. All right, so those are all of the games. How long did that take? Less than 40 minutes. So I managed to make this one slightly shorter than the other one. Still way too long. Apologies. I hope that this, you know, I hope that if in future I end up doing more sort of battle report kind of breakdowns, then I'll maybe be able to throw up some graphics on screen of the list that were played or whatever. But given that there were 5 games and a lot to be said, I thought we'd just do it in this format this time. Again, I'm focusing more on just getting Malifaux content out there rather than perfecting that content or really, you know, jazzing it up in any way. Let's just, you know, keep getting content out there, and if I find more time to polish it, I'll do that. I can only apologize to my opponents for the fact that we rarely saw turn 4 or 5. I realize that I personally blame the format and the lack of clocks and the TOs, but I totally understand if you guys blamed me either now or at the time. I hope that my first video and maybe this one give you a bit of context as to why that was happening, and I would love to play against any and all of you again on clock anytime. Thank you all for the games. I really did enjoy the games themselves, and I hope to play again soon. Right, hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the games, and I will continue to record Vassal games and so on and so forth, and produce the occasional bit of Malifaux content, and I will be throwing it up on this channel as and when I get the chance. I will leave it there because this one's already been a long one. Take care, all the best, and I'll see you for the next one.